In the chill of early morning, the quiet streets of downtown seemed deserted, except for the steady hum of a lone patrol car cruising by. Inside, Officer Derek Mansfield, a man known for his tough demeanor and questionable judgments, was starting his day with the usual rounds. As the sun barely hinted at the horizon, the officer's mood was as dark as the sky above. Unbeknownst to him, the day would unfold in a way that would make him rethink every action he had ever taken. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Erica Johnson prepared for her morning shift at the local cafe. Erica, a recent transplant to the city, had taken the job to support her dream of becoming a nurse. Little did she know that her resolve and dreams would soon be put to a severe test. As she stepped out, travel mug in hand, her path was destined to cross with Officer Mansfield's in the most unexpected and harrowing way. Their encounter happened just as Erica was about to enter the cafe. Officer Mansfield, responding to a call nearby, mistakenly identified Erica as a suspect from a description that barely matched. The situation escalated quickly when Mansfield, without warning, confronted her aggressively. Caught off guard and fearing for her safety, Erica's immediate reaction was to shield herself. But Mansfield's response was disproportionate and shocking. He threw the hot water from his own thermos, striking Erica in the face. The pain was immediate, and Erica's screams pierced the morning air, drawing the attention of bystanders. But as the crowd gathered, and Mansfield realized the gravity of his mistake, the universe seemed to align itself against him. Just 3 minutes later, as Erica was tended to by concerned onlookers, a senior officer arrived on the scene, having been alerted by the growing crowd. What happened next was something Mansfield never saw coming. This incident not only ignited a confrontation between Mansfield and his own colleagues, but also sparked a series of events that would expose more than just one man's misconduct. As the video continues, we delve deeper into the systemic issues that allowed this to happen, the community's rallying for justice, and the powerful story of Erica's resilience in the face of adversity. Stay tuned as we unravel how karma, sometimes immediate and formidable, can truly shock those who least expect it. As the crowd around Erica grew, whispers turned into loud concerns. Passers-by became witnesses, and each testimony seemed to add weight to the grim situation unfolding. Officer Mansfield stood back, his face a mixture of confusion and regret, as his colleagues stepped in to manage the crowd and attend to Erica. The senior officer, Captain Reynolds, a veteran with a keen sense for justice and a low tolerance for misconduct within his ranks, took Mansfield aside. His voice was stern, yet controlled, as he questioned Mansfield about the events leading up to the altercation. Meanwhile, Erica, clutching her face in agony, was helped inside the cafe by a kind-hearted barista. The cafe, usually a beacon of warmth and chatter, had suddenly turned into a makeshift trade unit. The patrons who had been enjoying their morning coffee rushed to offer whatever help they could, ice from their drinks, clean napkins to stem the burning, soothing words to ease the shock. Among them was Julia, a regular at the cafe and a retired nurse who took charge of tending to Erica's injuries. Her skilled hands worked gently, assessing the burn with a professional eye, while her presence calmed the scared young woman. Outside, Captain Reynolds was piecing together the story from various bystanders. Each account built a clearer picture of a grave misunderstanding compounded by reckless action. It was evident that Mansfield had acted impulsively, a trait that Reynolds knew all too well could tarnish not just one officer's badge, but the reputation of the entire force. As the investigation unfolded, the camera panned across the concerned faces of the crowd, capturing a community shaken yet united. Back inside the cafe, Erica sat wrapped in a blanket, her face pale but her spirit undeterred. Julia's reassurance had a soothing effect, but Erica's mind was elsewhere. She recounted her dreams of nursing, of healing and helping others, a stark contrast to the harm that had come her way. Her determination to rise above the hardships life threw at her was palpable. The cafe's owner, Mr. Henderson, stood by her side, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a serious solemnity. He assured Erica that the cafe's surveillance cameras had captured everything, promising that justice would be served. As news of the incident spread, local news teams arrived, their cameras and microphones invading the small space, eager to cover the story. The narrative of a young black woman assaulted by a police officer under dubious circumstances resonated far beyond the cafe's walls. It tapped into a larger discourse on police accountability and racial profiling, topics that had ignited debates and protests across the nation. The incident was not just a local news story anymore. it became a symbol of a systemic issue that demanded attention. In the days following the incident, Erica became something of a reluctant public figure. Her story was shared across social media, sparking discussions about race, justice, and the power dynamics that too often lead to such confrontations. As Erica faced the world, her resilience turned her into a beacon of hope for many who had felt voiceless. Her situation drew the attention of activists and legal experts who offered support and guidance. Meanwhile, Officer Mansfield found himself suspended pending an investigation, his future uncertain and his past actions under scrutiny. As the investigation deepened, more details about Mansfield's career came to light. Colleagues spoke of a man who was once commendable but had become increasingly bitter and detached. The stress of the job, coupled with personal grievances, had slowly eroded his judgment, leading to several minor infractions that had gone mostly unnoticed or unaddressed by his superiors. Now, faced with a situation too grave to ignore, those same superiors had to confront not only Mansfield's actions but also the culture that had allowed them to fester. Each day brought new developments, each development a new layer of complexity to the story. As the community rallied behind Erica, offering support and seeking justice, the tension between the need for systemic change and the resistance from those entrenched in the old ways grew. Erica found herself at the center of a movement, her personal plight reflecting a struggle far greater than she could have ever imagined. In the midst of it all, Erica and Mansfield were two individuals caught in a narrative much bigger than themselves. Their story, still unfolding, held the power to influence perceptions, policies, and practices. It was a reminder of the human cost of negligence and prejudice, and that unyielding demand for accountability and reform. As the story continues, the questions remain: how will justice be served? Can a single incident spark lasting change? And what does the future hold for Erica Mansfield and a community forced to confront its deepest flaws? Stay tuned as the narrative unfolds, challenging us to look beyond the surface and examine the roots of our societal structures. As the city buzzed with the news of Erica's ordeal, voices from all corners began to weigh in. From town hall meetings to online forums, everyone had an opinion on the incident. Local activists, long vocal about issues of police misconduct, seized the moment to push for deeper reforms. They organized rallies, calling for accountability and changes in police training practices. Amid this growing clamor for justice, a subplot emerged. A young journalist named Tom, who saw in Erica's story the potential to spotlight a systemic issue that had affected his own family years before. Tom, working for a local newspaper, began to dig deeper into Mansfield's past and the department's history of complaints. His investigation revealed a pattern of behavior that went largely unchecked by those in power. As he pieced together stories of other victims, his articles started to resonate with a wider audience, drawing attention from national media outlets. Tom's dedication to uncovering the truth brought him into contact with Erica, and together they formed an unlikely alliance, united by a common goal of fostering change. Meanwhile, Officer Mansfield, now on leave, grappled with the fallout from his actions. Isolated and shunned by many of his peers, he found himself reflecting on his career and the decisions that led him to that fateful morning. In his solitude, he began to reach out to former colleagues, seeking to understand where things had gone wrong. Among them was Officer Clara, a former partner who had left the force due to the very issues now spotlighted by Erica's case. Their conversations, fraught with tension and regret, provided a glimpse into the personal conflicts that many officers faced, caught between the pressures of duty and the moral ambiguities of their work. Back at the cafe, Erica's life was transforming. Media attention had thrust her into a role she never expected to play. While grappling with her newfound visibility, she also dealt with the physical and emotional scars left by the incident. The community's support was overwhelming, yet the weight of her experience was a constant companion. She often found solace in speaking with Julia, the retired nurse who had first tended to her wounds. Julia's stories of resilience and recovery from her own trials helped Erica to harness her inner strength and articulate her desires for justice and systemic change. As the story of Erica and Mansfield continued to unfold, the city began to show signs of change. The police chief announced a series of workshops and forums designed to foster better communication and understanding between the police and the community. These forums, initially met with skepticism, gradually began to break down barriers as honest discussions revealed the shared challenges and fears of both officers and residents. The tension between the need for law enforcement and the community's demand for fair treatment created a dynamic backdrop for the unfolding drama. As Tom's articles continued to shed light on past injustices, and as Erica's voice grew stronger, the community started to envision a path forward. Yet, the deep-seated issues of trust and accountability remained, simmering beneath the surface. With each step towards progress, the shadows of past misdeeds loomed, threatening to undermine the fragile trust being built. The story of Erica and Mansfield was far from over. Questions about reconciliation and reform hung in the air, challenging the community to confront its past while striving to forge a future defined by fairness and understanding. As the city moved forward, the eyes of the nation watched, waiting to see whether this moment of crisis could indeed be turned into a catalyst for real change. As the city teetered on the brink of substantial reform, the tension in the air was palpable. The upcoming town hall meeting, announced as a pivotal moment to discuss the future of community policing, became the focal point of all the pent-up expectations and frustrations. Both advocates for police reform and supporters of the department were gearing up to voice their opinions, knowing that the outcomes could reshape their lives and their community. Erica, now a symbol of the struggle against police misconduct, prepared to speak at the meeting. Her story had not only highlighted issues within the police force, but had also inspired a wider movement for justice and equality. Despite her nerves, she felt a deep responsibility to represent those who had suffered in silence. She rehearsed her speech meticulously, choosing her words to resonate with both heart and reason, aiming to bridge divides and foster understanding. Meanwhile, Tom's latest exposé, detailing a decade-long pattern of unchecked authority within the police force, hit the newsstands the morning of the town hall. The article sent ripples through the community, adding fuel to the already simmering tensions. As people pored over the details, the need for a transparent discussion at the meeting became even more critical. Tom knew his reporting could either help pave the way for constructive dialogue or push the opposing sides further apart, depending on how the facts were received during the discussions. Officer Mansfield, whose career and choices were now under the microscope, faced his own reckoning. The isolation from his colleagues and community had given him a lot of time to reflect on his actions and the systemic failures that contributed to the incident. He decided to attend the town hall, not as a speaker, but as a listener. This decision was his first step toward understanding the broader implications of his actions, a move that surprised many of his former supporters and detractors alike. On the eve of the town hall, the community was a hive of activity. Flyers were handed out, social media buzzed with calls to action, and local news channels set up live feeds, anticipating a significant turnout. The police department, aware of the heightened emotions, increased their presence not as enforcers but as participants, showing a willingness to engage that had been absent in the past. As the night of the meeting arrived, the large auditorium was filled to capacity. Erica took her place at the front, her presence commanding attention. Across the room, faces both familiar and new, anxious and hopeful, looked on. Captain Reynolds, who had been instrumental in initiating some of the recent changes within the department, opened the meeting with a call for civility and progress. The air was thick with anticipation as one by one, residents took the microphone. Stories of personal experiences with the police, both positive and negative, filled the room. Each narrative added layers to the complex relationship between the police force and the community it served. Midway through the meeting, a surprising turn of events unfolded when Officer Mansfield stood up, his figure casting a long shadow over the proceedings. His presence was a palpable reminder of the incident that had sparked this entire discussion. As the city teetered on the brink of substantial reform, the tension in the air was palpable. The upcoming town hall meeting, announced as a pivotal moment to discuss the future of community policing, became the focal point of all the pent-up expectations and frustrations. Both advocates for police reform and supporters of the department were gearing up to voice their opinions, knowing that the outcomes could reshape their lives and their community. Erica, now a symbol of the struggle against police misconduct, prepared to speak at the meeting. Her story had not only highlighted issues within the police force, but had also inspired a wider movement for justice and equality. Despite her nerves, she felt a deep responsibility to represent those who had suffered in silence. She rehearsed her speech meticulously, choosing her words to resonate with both heart and reason, aiming to bridge divides and foster understanding. Meanwhile, Tom's latest exposé, detailing a decade-long pattern of unchecked authority within the police force, hit the newsstands the morning of the town hall. The article sent ripples through the community, adding fuel to the already simmering tensions. As people pored over the details, the need for a transparent discussion at the meeting became even more critical. Tom knew his reporting could either help pave the way for constructive dialogue or push the opposing sides further apart, depending on how the facts were received during the discussions. Officer Mansfield, whose career and choices were now under the microscope, faced his own reckoning. The isolation from his colleagues and community had given him a lot of time to reflect on his actions and the systemic failures that contributed to the incident. He decided to attend the town hall, not as a speaker, but as a listener. This decision was his first step toward understanding the broader implications of his actions, a move that surprised many of his former supporters and detractors alike. On the eve of the town hall, the community was a hive of activity. Flyers were handed out, social media buzzed with calls to action, and local news channels set up live feeds, anticipating a significant turnout. The police department, aware of the heightened emotions, increased their presence not as enforcers but as participants, showing a willingness to engage that had been absent in the past. As the night of the meeting arrived, the large auditorium was filled to capacity. Erica took her place at the front, her presence commanding attention. Across the room, faces both familiar and new, anxious and hopeful, looked on. Captain Reynolds, who had been instrumental in initiating some of the recent changes within the department, opened the meeting with a call for civility and progress. The air was thick with anticipation as one by one, residents took the microphone. Stories of personal experiences with the police, both positive and negative, filled the room. Each narrative added layers to the complex relationship between the police force and the community it served. Midway through the meeting, a surprising turn of events unfolded when Officer Mansfield stood up, his figure casting a long shadow over the proceedings. His presence was a palpable reminder of the incident that had sparked this entire discussion. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him, the tension reaching its peak. Mansfield's appearance was unexpected, and his next actions were uncertain. Would he defend his actions, or would he take this opportunity to show remorse and support for change? The community braced for his words, ready to confront the past and hoping to hear a commitment to a new path forward. As Mansfield cleared his throat, the silence was almost overwhelming. The community's collective breath seemed to hang in the balance, waiting for words that would either mend fences or deepen divides. This moment, charged with the potential for transformation, was the culmination of weeks of pain, reflection, and activism. It was the turning point everyone had been waiting for. Yet no one could predict exactly how the pieces would fall once the words were spoken. As Officer Mansfield stood before the packed room, his usually assertive voice trembled slightly, betraying his inner turmoil. The silence was deafening, every attendee hanging on the precipice of his words. When he finally spoke, his message was not one of defense, but one of unexpected vulnerability. "I stand here not as an officer today, but as a citizen of this community," Mansfield began, his eyes scanning the room. "What happened with Erica was a failure, not just on my part, but of a system that I realize now is flawed deeper than I'd ever admitted before." His acknowledgement was a raw moment of truth that resonated through the room. People exchanged surprised glances, some faces softened, while others remained skeptical. His next words, however, introduced a new layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. "But," he continued, "there is something you all deserve to know." The room tensed again, bracing for more. "The call I responded to that morning was based on information that was not just flawed. It was deliberately misleading. We were set up to fail, to escalate a situation that should never have occurred." This revelation sparked a murmur of confusion and outrage among the audience. The implication that someone within the department might have manipulated the events leading to the confrontation with Erica added a sinister twist to the already complicated narrative. As the community absorbed Mansfield's bombshell, Tom, the journalist, saw a new angle for his investigation. His mind raced with questions about who could benefit from such manipulation and why. His resolve deepened to unearth this new conspiracy, promising his readers he would not rest until the truth was revealed. Meanwhile, Erica, who had listened intently to Mansfield's confession, felt a mix of emotions. The acknowledgement of the system's failure and the suggestion of deliberate sabotage brought new dimensions to her quest for justice. It wasn't just about one wrong action, but perhaps about uncovering a pattern of orchestrated conflicts that targeted vulnerable communities. Her personal story had now intertwined with a larger, more disturbing plot that could have implications for the entire city. As the meeting continued, the atmosphere shifted from shock to an urgent call for deeper inquiry. Community leaders demanded an independent investigation into Mansfield's claims, insisting on transparency and accountability not just from individual officers but from the top of the command chain. Captain Reynolds, who had been monitoring the situation, recognized the gravity of the moment. He assured the community of his commitment to full transparency and accountability. "This is not the end, but a beginning to cleanse our ranks and rebuild trust," he declared, setting the stage for sweeping inquiries that would scrutinize the department's operations and interactions with the community. The stakes had never been higher. As the town hall meeting adjourned, groups formed in clusters, discussing the potential implications of Mansfield's revelations. Erica found herself at the center of a new narrative about corruption and manipulation within the police force. Her cause had gained even more supporters, fueling a campaign that now sought not just answers but systemic reform. The community left the meeting with more questions than answers, but with a renewed determination to seek the truth. The revelation had not only escalated the conflict, but had also united the town in a common pursuit of justice and integrity. As the plot thickened, the anticipation of how deep the corruption ran kept everyone on edge, awaiting the next developments that would inevitably shake the foundation of their trust and safety. As the days following the town hall meeting turned into weeks, the community's demand for clarity and justice grew stronger. The independent investigation into Officer Mansfield's claims was in full swing, with external agents combing through communications and operations within the police department. Tom, ever the diligent journalist, was also deep in his own investigation, tracing leads that hinted at corruption more malignant than anyone had anticipated. Meanwhile, Erica, now a prominent figure in the movement for police reform, continued to advocate passionately. Her voice, once that of a solitary victim, had become a beacon for many who had experienced similar injustices. The city watched as she transformed her pain into powerful activism, her story igniting a much-needed discourse on reform and reconciliation. As the investigation neared its conclusion, the community gathered once again, this time in anticipation of the revelations that would reshape their police force and their collective future. The auditorium was packed, the air thick with tension and hope. The lead investigator took the stage, clearing his throat before addressing the restless crowd. "Our investigation has uncovered substantial evidence," he began, his voice steady and resolute. "We have identified several instances where misinformation was deliberately planted to provoke confrontations between police and community members." A gasp swept through the crowd as the implications sank in. The investigator continued, revealing that a small group within the police force, including higher-ups, had been manipulating events to undermine reforms and maintain the status quo. The audience was on edge, hanging on every word. But it was the next revelation that turned the room silent. "Our findings also implicate an external influence," the investigator declared. "A private security firm hired by local business interests aimed to sow discord to push for heavier policing in certain neighborhoods." The revelation was shocking, tying the community's struggles to a broader scheme driven by profit and control. The room erupted in murmurs and uneasy looks. The plot was deeper and more sinister than anyone had suspected. As the implications of this corruption settled in, Captain Reynolds, who had quietly supported the investigation, stood up. "In light of these findings, I am announcing my retirement," he stated solemnly. "It's clear that new leadership is required to steer this department towards genuine reform and regain your trust." The community was left reeling, but also felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path forward was now clearer, but it required significant changes at all levels. In the weeks that followed, the implicated officers were suspended, and the external security firm was exposed and banned from operating in the city. Reforms were implemented under new leadership, with community oversight becoming a key component of policing policy. As for Erica, her journey had taken her from victim to victor, her efforts culminating in tangible changes, but the story was not over yet. In a final twist, during one of her speeches, a young man approached her, introducing himself as the brother of the officer who had first responded with Mansfield that fateful day. He revealed his intention to join the police academy, inspired by Erica's courage and determined to be part of the solution. This revelation, bringing the narrative full circle, showed that change was possible, even within families and individuals closely tied to the old ways. The community, once fractured, now found a common ground. Their resilience and collective action paving the way for a future where justice and accountability went hand in hand. In the months that followed, the city witnessed a transformation that few could have imagined before the fateful incident that had brought them all to a turning point. The new police chief, appointed from outside the troubled department to ensure neutrality and fresh perspectives, was a woman of integrity and grit. She implemented comprehensive training programs focusing on community engagement and ethical behavior, and established a transparent oversight committee that included members of the community. Erica, whose life had been altered irrevocably one morning, found a new path as a leader and advocate for justice. Her voice, once trembling in a hospital room, now resonated in public forums and workshops where she taught young people about their rights and how to engage constructively with law enforcement. Her journey had inspired many, and she had become a pivotal figure in the movement toward a fairer society. Tom's articles had played a crucial role in bringing the hidden truths to light, earning him a prestigious journalism award. But more importantly, his work had sparked a nationwide discussion about the influence of private interests in public safety, leading to legislative proposals aimed at regulating such collaborations more strictly. As for Mansfield, the man whose actions had set this entire saga in motion, his journey was one of introspection and redemption. Following a period of suspension, he chose to leave the police force, dedicating his time to working with a nonprofit that focused on the rehabilitation of officers involved in misconduct. His efforts to make amends were met with mixed feelings, but for him, it was a way to atone for his past and contribute to a better future. The young man who had approached Erica, inspired by her resilience, graduated from the police academy with honors. His dedication to reform and community service was a testament to the positive impact that personal transformation and accountability can have. He often spoke of Erica's influence on his career choice, highlighting the interconnectedness of their stories and the ripple effects of change. As the city healed and grew, the annual anniversary of the incident became a day of reflection and celebration of progress. Community gatherings, discussions, and workshops marked the occasion, reinforcing the commitments made and the strides taken towards a more just community. Erica, always at the heart of these events, used the platform to remind everyone of the work still needed to ensure no one else would endure what she had. The cafe where it all began had become more than just a spot for coffee. It was a community hub, adorned with photos and articles about the movement, serving as a constant reminder of the power of community and the importance of vigilance in the face of injustice. In her closing remarks at one such gathering, Erica shared a powerful message. Our journey towards justice and equality is continuous, and each of us plays a part in it. We must keep the conversation going, hold each other accountable, and ensure we are building a community where everyone feels safe and respected. As the sun set on the gathering, the crowd dispersed, but the bonds formed during these turbulent times remained strong. The city had faced its darkest moments together and had emerged stronger, more united. The story of Erica, Mansfield, and the community's collective journey towards justice and reform would be remembered not just as a series of events, but as a pivotal moment that reshaped their lives and the fabric of their society. The conclusion of this story leaves us with a clear message. Change is possible when communities unite, when individuals dare to confront the status quo, and when justice is pursued relentlessly. Erica's story, from tragedy to triumph, serves as an enduring inspiration, reminding us that while the path to justice can be fraught with challenges, the pursuit is always worthwhile. Thus, the story concludes not with an ending but with an invitation to continue the fight for justice, to remain engaged, and to always strive for a society that upholds the dignity and rights of all its members. The narrative of change is ongoing, and each person has a role to play in writing the chapters that will define our future.